The little electric locomotive hummed like a fat bumblebee as it glided through the narrow brick tunnel beneath London's streets. Elsie Pritchard, senior maintenance engineer for the Mail Rail Heritage Line, stood in the open doorway of the driver's cab, warming her hands on a mug of builder's tea and watching scarlet bags sway on their hooks. Although the post office railway had been closed to regular traffic since the 80s, a skeleton service still ran each dawn and dusk, moving confidential packets for government departments that preferred the tunnels to couriers on clogged roads. Elsie loved the quiet hum of it all, the glow of the old tungsten lamps, the metallic smell of track grease, and the way sound carried down the tube like a whispered secret. At Platform W, a disused siding near Mount Pleasant, she hopped off to replace a cracked ceramic insulator reported during the night run. Her steel-capped boots rang on the platform, and echoes blew back at her like pigeons startled in a church tower. While rummaging in the tool locker, she noticed a canvas sack wedged behind a fire extinguisher. No destination tag fluttered from its cord. Curious, she tugged it free, upended it onto a sorting table, and out tumbled 10 neat envelopes tied with faded violet ribbon. The envelopes were cream-laid paper, heavy with deckled edges, and a faint scent of orris root. Each bore a bright red, Mount Pleasant, 6:30 a.m., 15 Feb 2024 machine-printed postmark. Elsie frowned. That was today's date. Yet the addresses were written in a copperplate hand that reminded her of the framed specimens displayed in the visiting centre, the tidy loops and flourishes of a Victorian Clarke. She slid one letter out. The ink was sepia, slightly feathered, unmistakably iron gall. Across the top danced a flourish, "My dearest Cecily." Victorian stationery, modern stamp, it made no sense. She slipped the bundle into her rucksack. The mail traffic this morning was light, and mysteries were much more appealing than cracked insulators. After her shift, Elsie climbed the spiral service stairway into drizzle-grey Clerkenwell and made for the canteen above the Postal Museum. Only one table was occupied. Lucinda Chow, curator of philatelic collections, hunched over toast soldiers. Lucinda possessed a laugh like cellophane being scrunched, and a brain that stored obscure dates the way squirrels hoard acorns. "I've brought you a treat," Elsie said, dropping the letters beside the marmalade. "Brand new antiques." Lucinda adjusted her cat-eye glasses. "Postmarked this morning, envelopes from the 1890s. Impossible unless someone's been time-travelling or raiding props from a period drama." She sniffed the paper, then rummaged in her tote for a magnifier. "See those fibres? Rag pulp, not wood. Authentic. But the franking ink is the digital variety we introduced in 2019. Someone's meddling." They opened the top letter carefully. "I have secured passage on the 9 o'clock down mail train this Friday. Meet me by the western lift shaft, and we shall elope as planned. My heart is fixed on no destination but your happiness." It was signed Rupert H. M. Atherton, 14th of February, 1896. Lucinda's eyes flicked towards the museum's new exhibition, Love Letters Through the Ages, due to open on Valentine's Day. If a forger were creating lost correspondence for wealthy collectors, today's date on the postmark could act as proof of provenance. Misleading proof, obviously. But why risk mailing them through the system? To give them an official scarlet cancellation, Elsie mused. An unbreakable chain of custody. Lucinda drummed her fingers. "I know one man who'd salivate over such letters, Dr. Percy Caldwell. He's advising on the exhibition. You're scheduled to escort him on a tunnel tour at 6, aren't you?" Elsie groaned. "He makes me hold the torch while he lectures the bricks." "All the same, Lucinda said, tapping the bundle. "Show him one. Gauge his reaction." That evening, Elsie met Dr. Caldwell at the loading bay. Tall, stooped, waistcoat straining over a rotund belly, the philatelist carried a silver-topped cane he didn't appear to need, more scepter than support. With him was Jasper Finch, a suave stamp dealer with hair as lacquered as a toffee apple. Finch insisted on shaking Elsie's oily hand, with a shudder that suggested he disinfected afterwards. The little inspection wagon rattled away from the museum frontage and into darkness. Caldwell peppered Elsie with questions about carriage widths, axle gauges, and whether mailbags in 1896 were cotton or canvas. Finch, meanwhile, clicked pictures on his phone whenever Caldwell's back was turned. Halfway through the circuit, Elsie produced one of the love letters. "Found this off route this morning." "Odd, isn't it?" Caldwell's eyes gleamed behind half-moon spectacles. "Exquisite, genuine Wattman envelope, mid-1890s watermark. Yet modern franking, outrageous." He stroked the paper like a cat. "Where are the rest?" "In my locker. Why?" "For your own safety, my dear. Keep them secret." The edge in his voice surprised her. Then he brightened. "Come to my study tomorrow with the lot. We'll authenticate them. Finch, you will attend?" Finch's smile was bland. "If your diary allows, Percy." When the tour ended, Elsie secured the wagon, watched the two men depart, and cycled home through mist swirling against iron railings. The letters thumped in her pannier like a second heart. She spent the night reading them, following Rupert Atherton's shifting fortunes, an engineer on the very railway she now serviced, hopelessly in love with Cecily Montague, daughter of a shipping magnate. Rupert planned to whisk her to New York. The final letter stopped mid-sentence, ink blurred by a raindrop. Elsie felt bereft, as though the lovers were her own friends lost in fog. Morning brought bad news, sharper than any hangover. Lucinda rang at 7. "Percy Caldwell is dead. Found in the depot at Platform W. They think he slipped under a mail trolley, but Inspector Abidi isn't convinced." Elsie dressed in record time. At Platform W, the tunnel was a Morse code of police torches. Caldwell lay beside the sorting table where she had discovered the sack. His cane was snapped, his waistcoat buttons burst, and a half-moon of bruising marred his temple. Inspector Abidi, immaculate moustache bristling, greeted Elsie. "Routine health and safety or deliberate shove?" she asked quietly. "Could be either," Abidi said. "No CCTV here, but my constable found this under the body." He produced a scrap of ribbon, violet, frayed. "Recognize it?" Elsie swallowed. "Tied round some letters I showed him last night." Abidi's eyebrow arched like a signal arm. "Letters which are now missing. My locker's been jimmied. They're gone." "Then Caldwell died for them, or someone killed him to retrieve them," the inspector said. "Stay available, Miss Pritchard." Elsie slipped away before he could confiscate the one letter she still carried in her jacket lining. She needed help, and Lucinda was already waiting in a staff room lined with posters of penny blacks and chocolate ads. "Think Finch pinched them?" Lucinda asked. "He was first to know they existed. Could have followed Caldwell into the tunnel to bargain, or to silence. But motive also stretches to collectors on the waiting list for our exhibition. Those letters would headline any auction." Lucinda opened her laptop. "Let's run some tests on the single sheet you kept." In the conservation lab, they photographed ink under infrared, measured ferrous content, and checked the gum on the stamp at the corner. "Ink's iron gall all right," Lucinda said, "but analysis places its manufacture last month. Someone replicated a Victorian recipe down to the purple wash, but the sulfate ratios are fractionally modern." so a contemporary hand wrote in exact period style. Elsie frowned. Could Rupert Atherton himself be fictional? Lucinda clicked through digital archives, searching shipping manifests. There was indeed a Rupert H. M. Atherton, mechanical draftsman, who disappeared from records in 1896. Real man, real love story. Someone had mined history for raw material. A knock startled them. Jasper Finch leaned in, silk scarf immaculate. Inspector Abidi says I'm free to go, but my conscience aches. He reached inside his blazer and produced 9 of the 10 letters. Caldwell invited me to Superior Investments. I glimpsed your bundle last night and fancied a closer look. Snatched them from your locker. Then I heard his cane clatter down the stairwell. When I reached the platform, he was dead. I panicked, ran. Elsie's suspicion flared. Why return them? Because murder is poor for business. He slid a card across the bench. Perhaps we can cooperate once the fuss subsides. After he left, Elsie lifted the lid from the evidence bag. One's missing, the earliest letter. The first clue, Lucinda murmured. If Finch kept any, it would be that. But why that one? Lucinda opened the scanned copies they had made earlier. Letter number 1 contained a line. The master die hides beneath Athena's gaze, where no Clarke dares linger. Sounds like a riddle, Elsie said. Athena's gaze. There's a statue of the goddess on the pediment above the old ticket hall, closed since World War II. They donned hard hats and descended forgotten stairs choked with dust. In the silent hall, Athena's stone eyes stared across collapsing turnstiles. Beneath her plinth, they found a square of fresher mortar. Elsie chipped at it with her spanner until a tin emerged, lid rusted but intact. Inside lay an engraving plate the size of a postcard, an intricate 2-penny stamp design featuring twin doves. Lucinda whistled. That's the master die Rupert perhaps created, unissued Victorian stamp. If a modern forger possessed it, they could strike impressions on blank period paper, fabricate entire correspondences, sell each for thousands. And Caldwell was expert enough to spot misuse, Elsie said slowly. He asked me to bring the letters today, probably to compare the impression with the die. Whoever killed him feared exposure. Footfalls crunched behind them. Inspector Abidi approached, torch beam a white spear. I thought I'd find you meddling, he said. Finch was mugged outside the museum 10 minutes ago. His coat contained only 1 letter, the earliest. Attacker unseen. He eyed the plate in Elsie's hands. That, I presume, is evidence. Of forgery past and present, Lucinda said. Someone here is desperate to keep profits flowing. Abidi escorted them back upstairs, sealing the hall behind him. The die went to the evidence locker. Elsie went for strong tea. Lucinda lingered at the lab, claiming she needed to finish emails. Night fell again, and the tunnels thrummed. Elsie couldn't rest. The lover's story, the forgery, Caldwell's death, threads braided inside her mind. One knot worried her. Lucinda had known where Rupert worked, had steered them to Caldwell, had immediate access to labs that could replicate old ink. And she alone still held the missing earliest letter. Finch's robber had delivered it back to her, perhaps unwittingly. Elsie hurried toward the conservation lab, pulse drumming. Through the frosted glass panel, she saw Lucinda in her white coat, bending over the die removed from police custody. The evidence locker door hung open. Lucinda pressed a sheet of dampened paper onto the plate, rolled it with an inked brayer, then peeled off a crisp impression showing twin doves. Elsie pushed inside. Loose. Lucinda spun, startled. Elsie, Abidi asked me to make test prints for court. No, he's briefing the coroner. The die was under seal. You retrieved it with your master pass. Lucinda's shoulders sagged. She removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Fine. Yes, it was me. Caldwell confronted you? He guessed I forged the letters. He threatened to report me to Scotland Yard unless I cut him in for 60%. We argued on the platform. He lunged for the die. I shoved the trolley between us, meant only to block him. He tripped. Lucinda's voice shook. I didn't think he'd die. Elsie felt as though the tunnel air had thinned. Why, Lucinda? You have a permanent post, respect, pension. Respect? Lucinda laughed bitterly. They axed 2 curator roles last year. Mine's next. The die was worthless metal until I gave it a story. Wealthy romantics pay fortunes for tales of doomed love. I was rescuing our department, saving jobs. Then greed crept in. Tears dotted her lashes. When Finch stole the letters, I hired a kid on a bike to snatch them back. No one was supposed to get hurt. Sirens wailed above ground. Abidi must have discovered the breach. Lucinda closed the lab door, locked it. I can't go to prison. Let's unlock the door, Elsie said softly. Tell Abidi the truth, negotiate. It'll go better than another accident. But Lucinda backed toward an emergency hatch leading down to the tracks. Goodbye, Elsie. I'm taking the die, disappearing. She popped the hatch, climbed into darkness. Elsie followed, cursing, dropping onto the ballast beside rail, humming with upcoming traffic. Lucinda ran, white coat flapping like a moth. Elsie sprinted after her, calling her name. Ahead, a maintenance train rounded the curve, headlights blazing. Lucinda froze between the rails, uncertain which way to jump. Elsie tackled her, rolling them into the gutter as the train thundered past, wind tugging hair and coat. The die skittered into the shadows. Moments later, torches bobbed. Abidi's team reached them. Lucinda lay weeping, face streaked with dirt and remorse. She did not resist as cuffs closed. The following week, the tunnels felt lonelier. Elsie returned to Platform W, replacing the ceramic insulator she had forgotten. Afterwards, she sat on the sorting table, reading the letters recovered intact. Though forged, they retained a peculiar magic. She slipped them into an archive box marked Evidence, then added a note of her own on crisp modern paper. To future readers, people still risk all for love, of money, history, or another soul. May we tread carefully in these tunnels of secrets. She sealed the box, placed it on a high shelf, and headed for the lift. Above, London rumbled on, unaware, while the mail rail kept its cool, cosy mysteries humming under the streets.